Pop Culture Pastor.
I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. It's such an honour to be here, and I'd just like to say that when I'm not playing Xbox with my mate Thor, I really like to listen to my favourite podcast, Pop Culture Pastor.
You know, Cody, I've been thinking a lot about when our environment got so toxic. Like when
the physical environment or the social environment?
The social environment.
Okay.
I'm not going Greenpeace on you.
Okay. I was just double checking.
Although I'm all for not letting our environment be toxic.
Thank you.
Just so no one concludes anything different by that comment. But I'm thinking more of the social environment. And I think, a lot of people might have been thinking, well, the pandemic came in and it did a bunch of things and it isolated us, and a lot more people were working from home, and it made people sad, and then it made people mad, because that's what happens when you get sad, is then you get mad, and we don't know how to process all these feelings. And you might have fallen under that sort of mode of thinking of when you're looking around the world now and saying, hey, the world's just a little bit harsher right now. People are complaining a little bit more. People are not as friendly, maybe. People just aren't relating as well together. And you might look at all of that and say, well, I think this is probably a byproduct of the pandemic. But you'd be wrong.
I mean, I might say that maybe the pandemic put more of a magnifying glass on it, but not... Yeah. It didn't change much.
So we here at Pop Culture Pastor, which is what you're listening to, the Pop Culture Pastor podcast, we here at Pop Culture Pastor, we're dedicated to truth.
The truth will set you free.
And we wanted to find exactly when it all went wrong. It's like Quantum Leap, except our version. I'm going back in the past, and I'm hoping, I'm trying to find right wrongs, and every leap I'm hoping will be the leap that sends me home.
Good luck.
Anyways, I know when it all went wrong, and that was September 9th, 2014.
Okay, that's an odd date.
Yeah, it's pretty specific. September 9th, 2014. It's a morning I don't remember at all.
Okay.
Except for one little detail. That morning, 500 million iTunes users woke up and found extra music on their iTunes account. And that was U2's album, Songs of Innocence, automatically downloaded to their iTunes accounts against their will. And that was the end of freedom, Cody.
That was not.
Clearly, this was the starting point that set everything off. If you're a Community fan, it started an alternate timeline.
It did,
where evil Bono now rules.
The darkest timeline.
Okay, I'm kidding a little bit, but honestly, maybe this is the beginning of our environment where we just complain about things, because Bono came out so he's published excerpts from his memoir that's coming out called Surrender, 40 Songs, One Story. And in part of the book, apparently, he discusses this debacle, and he writes this, which, gosh, this just, Bono didn't have a ghostwriter, man. He wrote this all himself. Mm-hmm. Quote, "You might call it vaunting ambition or vaulting. Critics might accuse me of overreach. It is." Is he British? I don't even know.
I'm pretty sure he's Irish.
He's Irish. Okay, I can't really do that. But he basically takes responsibility for it, and he apologized. He goes on to say, "I don't think we gave it away free. I think you pay us for it, and then you give it away free as a gift to people. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" Talking to the president of Apple. Mm-hmm. And it's their choice whether they want to listen to it, which is what he said. How very wrong he was.
He wasn't.
And he wrote in his memoir, he takes full responsibility for it. And I'm just sitting here thinking about this, Cody, and I'm thinking, really? He has to apologize for giving people free music? Look, it's not Nickelback, it's U2.
One of the greatest bands to ever exist.
Could be the greatest. Some people would argue the greatest band of all time. giving you free music.
And, I mean, there's not a bad message to it.
No. And he's not wrong. If you didn't want it, you just deleted it.
Yeah, I'm perplexed by how everyone reacted during that time. Because I'm like, okay, I'll take free music.
Oh, you want to give me a free U2 album? Oh, come on.
This story and Bono apologizing for this makes me even more upset with people that are all about Metallica right now because of Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, they're the reason I don't get free music.
They crushed Napster.
And then you all crushed my hopes and dreams of other bands following suit of U2.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane that we live in a day and age where Metallica's awesome and Bono has to apologize for giving us free music.
Because he's the biggest villain to ever exist in humanity.
I mean, it's like the record industry is writing the script for our lives at this point.
It's so frustrating.
Big album, big music. I don't even know what you call it. Big recording industry. Whatever. They're worse than Big Pharma, apparently. They're pulling the strings.
They are. And Metallica is near the top of it.
Clearly, our only course of action is to nuke Nashville.
Well, that might be a bit extreme.
Yeah, that was a joke. No offense to our loved ones in Nashville. I actually know lots of people there.
Hearts and stuff.
I've got family there and friends. So, it's a joke. But honestly, I just never thought I'd see this day where Bono had to apologize for giving away free music. And it just seems sort of indicative of just like our environment. Everybody complains about something.
So the thing I'm going to complain about until we get free music is Metallica. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Yeah. Bono, you can give me all the free music. If you want to give me, just me personally, some of your stuff you haven't released, just some of the stuff you're working on, and maybe a remastered greatest hits album, I won't complain.
I will accept all live recordings as well.
If Bono wants to be on the pod,
Bono can be on the pod.
if Bono was on the podcast, I'd just quit making pods. You can't improve on that.
I would ask him how he feels about people doing, when I say people, I mean pastors doing Eucharist in church, because that's a thing.
Oh, some of their best songs are overtly Christian and most people don't know it. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Yeah, go read the lyrics. It's pretty overt. He's not hiding it.
In the name of love.
In the name of love, yeah. But that one, there's a lot about Martin Luther King in there, which, he was a pastor. So.
She moves in mysterious ways. Has some Holy Spirit vibes to it.
Okay. It's been a while since I've listened to that one. I'll have to go check that out.
So, again, get off of Bono.
Get off Bono's lawn. All right. This is the Pop Culture Pastor podcast. Welcome. Dave Cody here. We're here to talk about a movie we saw called Black Adam.
Loosely based on my real life story.
Okay. We'll be right back. Okay. We're in the studio. And it's time for us, Cody. This is a momentous occasion,
Very.
because it is finally time for us to actually smell what The Rock is cooking.
Ayo.
Yeah, you like that, huh?
I did.
I've been holding on to that one for a bit. It's time for us to smell what The Rock is cooking and deem whether it smells good or bad or just kind of okay.
Pancakes.
We're here to talk about Black Adam. We saw Black Adam and we're set to review that. This is the part of the podcast where if you haven't seen Black Adam and you do not want to be spoiled for the movie, although I don't know that there's a lot to spoil you on. if you've seen the trailers.
There's a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in credit scene, there's a couple story points that were surprising to me, but otherwise,
I can't tell you.
Yeah,
until you turn it off.
Yeah. So if you don't want to remain spoiler free before you see Black Adam, turn off the podcast now.
Do it.
Okay. Thanks for coming back.
I'm glad you watched it.
We're here to take a look at Black Adam. So we saw Black Adam, Cody. And what kind of superhero movie is this? Let's take a broad look at this. He's an anti-hero, which we're used to in these days. Mm-hmm. Venom and the Punisher and things like that. Batman even is sort of an anti-hero at times.
He can be. Although I would say that this is not, I guess, a solo movie. He shares it, and it's an introduction to another group of hero-esque type people.
Yeah, so the Justice Society of America appears.
The JSA.
Yeah, pretty prominently in this movie, although that's, again, if you've seen the trailer and you knew the comics, you knew that was happening.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of a shared movie. I'm not sure what to call this movie though. Like as far as what kind of superhero movie it is, I can say it just right off the bat. I'm a little disappointed that he's so heroic immediately. Black Adam. I don't know. It's an interesting take.
I don't know if he was super heroic. I mean, he has the end moment, but up until the end, like, yeah, he just happens to be on the right side of things.
Yeah, let me just say, okay, I'll just say right up front, my take that we had so many pods ago was that there's already this disappointment for me that I'm not getting him appearing in a Shazam movie first as a villain.
Yeah,
because that's his comics history. He's a villain, and it's only been recently that he's been kind of an anti-hero. And let me just say, I'm fine with the anti-hero turn, but I feel like he's much more menacing if we meet him as a villain first. And it's not like we can't do complicated villains, because Marvel does that all the time with these villains with these very sympathetic kind of backstories. So
Team Thanos.
Yeah, just right off the bat, my disappointment comes from a story choice, not necessarily the movie, right?
Okay.
So I guess, yeah. So there's looking at the movie broadly, trying to decide what kind of superhero movie it is.
It's a weird origin combo anti-hero movie.
Yeah, and weirdly ensemble. Yeah, more ensemble than I thought it was going to be. Okay, let's give it up for The Rock, okay?
Dwayne?
There's all this chatter out there that The Rock might be something of a narcissist.
That doesn't sound like The Rock I know.
And that this was going to be a vanity project. I didn't see that. In fact, his performance is pretty toned down, which I think was good for the character Black Adam. He's not just The Rock being The Rock, which is kind of what I was afraid of.
I have seen many movies where I thought The Rock was just being The Rock. And I'm okay with The Rock being The Rock. That's kind of fun. But this was not one of those movies.
Right. Yeah. And just to be clear, The Rock is very entertaining. But in this movie, he's very flat, very kind of deadpan. Like, he's not the guy who has a lot of the comedic stuff. Unless they're kind of unless he's delivering a line kind of flat. And that's where we're kind of making fun of him because he's a man out of time.
5,000 years out of time.
So an ensemble, it's more of an ensemble. And that's good and bad in places, I think. But we can get to that in a little bit. What do you think? What kind of superhero movie is it? And how's the story work for you, just overall?
So this movie, if it was viewed through the lens of an origin story, I think if it would have ended 3/4 of the way through, it might have been in my top 2 or 3 origin story movies.
Yeah. And
with Captain being probably my favorite origin story movie. And Batman Begins, but you have to be a Batman fan to really care to learn how he learns his crime fighting abilities. So I get that not everyone's going to go to that cup of tea. The movie then kind of takes a twist, and then it kind of loses some points, but it doesn't lose a lot in my book. So I view it as an origin story, and it could be a good relaunching point for DC.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would definitely agree with that. I think that the DC universe is in a better place than it was before this movie. Let's just say that. Now, that's going to be hit or miss for people. Like, this is probably like the critics are receiving this. It's going to be about 50-50, I think. Some people are going to like this. Some people are going to hate it.
I literally went on to Rotten Tomatoes, and Mick LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle gave it a 0 out of 4. And I'm his review, and I want to quote it fully. I don't even want to admit that it's an actual movie, but assuming it is, it's the worst of the year and one of the worst I've ever seen. And then I would say to that jabroni, because I'm now channeling my inner rock, have you watched movies? Oh my goodness. Like, oh, there's so many worse movies than this. Like, I'm not saying it's Citizen Kane. I'm going to get it out of the way early. It is not Citizen Kane or The Godfather. But to say it should not even be classified as a movie, you have not seen most of the horror genre. You haven't seen some of the superhero genre. Like, a lot of the DCEU films up to this point, way worse.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. That's, I'm glad you made that point, because a 0? He gave it a 0? I mean, there's been far worse DC movies.
So literally, early on, like when I first saw, like the night after critics got the early previews, like it was trending at an 8%. And I'm like, oh my Lanta. And then like it quickly jumped up to like 55, and then it settled around that 50 range.
Yeah. And I'm not going to spoil my rating yet.
Okay.
But I will say that
it's higher than a 0.
Well, it's definitely better than Batman versus Superman and the Justice League.
Especially the Whedon cut.
Yeah, the one that appeared in theaters. I don't really count the Zack Snyder cut because that's more of a curiosity after the fact.
It was a fun curiosity for me.
And it was for a lot of people, so that's fine. But the one that appeared in theaters was garbage. And this movie's better than both of those movies. But that's not saying a lot, because I hated both of them. So let's just get in to what's good.
Okay.
Do you want to go first?
I mean, can I just say the whole Justice Society? I really loved the Justice Society. This ensemble of the Justice Society was fun.
Okay, what parts? Are you just saying the characters that are chosen to be in this?
So the dynamics between all 4 of them, really carry some of the comedic moments for the movie, and carry a lot of the action for the movie. Because again, like, this was kind of an introduction to the Justice Society, because we've had the Justice League.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it's a Black Adam movie, but the Justice Society is heavily prominent. And let me pull up my people in the Justice Society.
Yeah, I can tell you that the Justice Society is going to appear on both on my what's good and what's not so good. I feel torn in a lot of ways.
So, of course, Dr. Fate was going to be a huge prominent factor in this. Hawkman which, holy cow, I feel he stole scenes. He just flat out outacted and captured my attention more so than anyone else in a lot of the scenes he's in. We get Cyclone and then Atom Smasher, whose uncle was the original and was the Fonz.
That's correct. The Fonz in a cameo. Yeah. So okay, like let me give we didn't do this, so let me give a very broad summary of the movie according to well, let's just go over what we saw here. In ancient Kahndaq, Teth Adam bestowed the almighty powers of the gods. After using these powers for vengeance, he's imprisoned, becoming Black Adam. Nearly 5,000 years have passed, and Black Adam has gone from man to myth to legend. Now free, his unique form of justice born out of rage is challenged by modern-day heroes who form the Justice Society, which, is kind of what we just said. That's kind of a weird summary. That's like their summary, the one Warner Brothers put out, but
because they're not wanting to spoil a whole lot, because that tells you nothing.
Well, and he doesn't really become Black Adam until the end.
Yeah,
he's Teth Adam for most of the movie, and basically he gets awoken by someone who's trying to, like, there's this weird kind of very woke colonialism story going on here, which I'll get to later because I don't want to talk about that till later. But the story is that, and they're obviously occupied by some colonial force. And there's, of course, freedom fighters, and then this very smart lady we're never told really why she's so smart.
Early on, they say she's a professor.
Yeah, right. Okay, she's a professor, an adventurer of some sort. Apparently, they're looking for,
like, she knows ancient text and can read manuscripts and stuff.
Yeah, she's very Indiana Jones-ish. But she's very, like,
Lara Croft Tomb Raider-ish at times.
If this were a video game, we'd call her OP because she just knows all the things.
She does.
And she, in a moment of desperation, just happens to stumble upon the tomb of Black Adam and knows a lot about the Shazam stuff because she says the words.
Well, it's on the floor.
Well, right, yeah. But she says it like she knows what's about to happen. Because remember, she says, she says it with purpose because she says that later on. I'm just glad you heard.
Word.
Yeah. And so that's when he appears. He's awoken. Goes on the rampage, kills a bunch of guys, bad guys, of course.
As one does.
And the story is put into motion. The JSA shows up because, Amanda Waller shows up to them, telling them that Black Adam is awake. They come to neutralize him, and then it kind of goes from there. They're foes at first. They realize they have to band together, blah, 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 because a new villain appears thanks to the crown, name of Sabak, and then they work together to neutralize him. That's pretty much what you got. And so the good stuff. What do we think is good? I think the acting was actually pretty good because, spoiler alert, I don't think the story is very good. That that might not be much of a surprise. I think in the chatter leading up to this movie, there was a lot of power trying to be wrestled. Walter Hamada's name is on the movie as executive producer, but he's out after this.
Oh, yeah. He's gonzo.
And it was clear that The Rock and Walter not on the same page.
And I'm Team Rock.
We know. Cody is Team Rock. But let's just start with Dwayne Johnson. Very impressed.
Oh, yeah.
He's very understated through most of the movie. He delivers line when he does have like a catchphrase, like tell him the man in black sent you. It's delivered deadpan and it's kind of funny.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. I think The Rock does something I did not expect him to do, which is kind of a very understated performance.
In which, if you've been asleep for 5,000 years or entombed for 5,000 years, It makes sense.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be knowing everything under the sun.
Yeah. The JSA, perfect. Pierce Brosnan. There will be no Pierce Brosnan slander here.
No.
The incomparable Pierce Brosnan is amazing as Dr. Fate.
I don't think he's been knighted, but I'm knighting him now.
Yes, sir.
Pierce Brosnan.
We cannot knight Pierce, but we can make him an honorary geek of the round table, even if he never sits at it. We confirm upon Pierce, honorary member of the Geeks of the Round Table. He's wonderful in it.
Oh my goodness.
Aldous Hodge. Who's this guy? Like,
Hawkman stealing the show. I literally wanted to run up and give him all the Oscars because he made me connect instantly.
Yeah. 10 minutes after he first appears, I wanted a Hawkman movie.
Yeah.
I wanted this to be a Hawkman movie, and I wanted what's this guy's story?
Literally,
he has a compound.
Any Hawk character in the past, whether it's Marvel or DC, I have said, phooey, this is junk. Sorry, other Hawks, but no, this one I'm all about.
He's reminiscent of the Falcon in Marvel, except this guy clearly has power.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the Falcon in the MCU just has wings. He doesn't have any sort of powers.
He has a Tony Stark suit.
Yeah. And so Aldous Hodge is great in this movie. Carries a lot of the scenes he's in, which is unexpected. The ones that Pierce Brosnan isn't already carrying. Noah Centineo as the Atom Smasher was excellent as well, along with Quintessa Swindell as Cyclone. Even their little chemistry they had, was good too. So they're a part of the team, but they're new members, and they have this little kind of joint story that's kind of them underneath the leadership of Dr. Fate and Hawkman, and they're delightful.
Anytime Noah and Aldous interact with each other, it's great.
Yeah. So the acting of the main players in the JSA and Dwayne Johnson, I thought was great. Oh yeah,
they do their job well.
Good stuff. Do you have any more good stuff? Scenes, whatever.
Oh my goodness. Again, any scene with Atom Smasher and Hawkman gets played for laughs, and it's great.
Yeah, it's an ongoing joke. What does he say to him? You and me. Yeah.
You on the ship.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this. He's implying that they're going to have a little tete-a-tete.
Come to Jesus meeting, if you will.
Atom Smasher is a young dude, clearly new to the hero game, which makes you wonder how he gets hooked up with the JSA.
Family connection.
Yeah. Other than his uncle is an old member of the JSA.
Which I'm glad it's the Fonz.
Yeah. Fought with him back in the day. You don't know that unless you read the comics, though.
Yeah.
Which, okay, we'll get to that. There's some story issues I have, but we'll get to that later. The scenes early on where we meet Black Adam, he first gets woken up and he's just kind of decimating the what is it that they're referred to? The tech something
gang. The
tech gang or whatever. Yeah. He's decimating them. That's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to see him. Although, yeah, he's pretty OP is Black Adam, which is from the comics, which sets up some interesting story points later. But the first action scenes with The Rock as Black Adam are pretty good. Other good things, scenes that stick out in your mind.
Oh my goodness. Like, I'm still kind of overwhelmed by watching it. To be honest, like, anytime Dr. Fate uses his powers, which is all in the helmet, those are like Doctor Strange-esque. Mm-hmm. And so if you really like the first Doctor Strange movie, you'll fall in love with this. It's almost Dr. Fate reminds me of like if Professor X got crossed with Doctor Strange.
Yeah, a little bit. And Dr. Fate kind of being the Doctor Strange of DC, or however you want to put that Doctor Strange is the Dr. Fate of Marvel. He is very interesting. I thought the special effects for him were great for Dr. Fate. I kind of expected an end credit scene for a continuation of his story. But that did not come.
Rumors are he's back.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to know how that's going to happen because he very clearly bites it. Spoilers.
Or
you already knew there were spoilers. No, it's pretty clear he buys the farm.
Or does he? The helmet has mysterious powers. I don't know what the powers are because we don't have a backstory on him yet.
The helmet works in mysterious ways.
But yeah, the gang is the inner gang.
The inner gang.
Yeah, that's literally...
That was weird.
Their name, and evidently they're from the comics too. So
yeah. Okay. Other good things? Scenes that you stick out?
So I actually do like the storytelling from the son's perspective, the boy that said the professor. And I'm not anti the colonial route that they take.
I'm not either, but I'll explain that fully. I'll explain that fully here when we get to stuff that wasn't so good.
There's a specific scene that I really enjoyed it in, although it kind of frustrated me at the same time. And that is, so there's this crown that Black Adam happened to be imprisoned with, that can bring back like the demon version of all the Shazam people. But when the mom is trying to get her son back and Black Adam stops Hawkman and is like, not your country, not your son, not your choice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, snap.
That was good. That was a well-delivered line, well-delivered story point. Well, do we just want to go there? We
can go there.
I mean, I want to let you deliver what's good first because this stuff that we're about to get into, I don't want people to think like that it just ruined the movie for me. But there's some curious storytelling choices here, in my opinion.
So, like, probably 15 minutes after that scene, I thought was probably a great place to end it. When you have Black Adam again imprisoned.
Yeah.
And you could have ended it with foreshadowing of, oh, that crown that is glowing with the charcoal body. It's not over yet.
Yeah, the Sabak stuff is, let's be fair, the worst part of the movie. It's bad.
It's rushed.
Yeah, it's even the effects for Sabak. If we're just kind of easing our way into the stuff that's not so great. The digital effects for Sabak are awful. It reminded me, looking at him reminds me of, you remember the video game guy voiced by Seth Rogen in the Chippendale movie? That's who he reminded me of. That's not good. It's not good. The digital effects are bad for that one.
So I didn't think it was awful, but compared to the rest of the movie, which I thought the cinematography for it looked really visually appealing.
Yeah.
It definitely stood out.
Yeah. And I wouldn't point out if it was just bad digital effects all the way around, it wouldn't be it really snapped me out of it. Some of the spots with Sabak, because like I said, the Dr. Fate stuff seemed really crisp and on point.
Oh yeah.
Like it should be. And they made it different too. They could have just went with a Doctor Strange kind of vibe, but they didn't. They made it its own thing. It has its own aesthetic. It looked great. And then there were a couple things with the digital effects that just seemed sort of rushed. One was Sabak. The other was the flashback scenes where Rock has his normal human body and his ginormous rock head on that body. Can we not slim up his head a little bit? It looked terrible. He's got a giant head.
I would say that would almost be a deal breaker, but as someone that has seen George Lopez since he's lost weight, his head's still big. So, I mean, some people just have a big head.
I mean, it looked like if you'd have put Barry Bonds' head in now on his body in 1990. Like, it was not good. It was rough. It was rough. So the digital effects for Sabak and just those little flashbacks with The Rock were kind of rough for me.
Which I wonder if were those things that were reshot, or was that something that just because of how backlogged the visual effects people are?
Yeah.
Because Marvel's faced this, like updating the visual effects up until like the week or two before the movie's set to premiere. Yeah, I mean,
there's some okay, so like this movie's very weird because there's some things in the movie that are really good. Like some of those performances, The Rock's performance is pretty good. Some of the digital effects are good, and some of the digital effects were so bad. And then an occasional line here and there made it feel like, oh, am I watching this on HBO Max? Is this just a made for, like, it felt like there were certain things that would take you out of it. And then it felt like it was a direct to HBO Max DC thing, which, you know, whatever. It's whatever. The Disney Plus stuff for Marvel has been largely underwhelming as well. So it's not like I'm not trying to diss on them. It was just weirdly inconsistent for me.
I think that they're also trying to struggle with that line of being an anti-hero and still being heroic. Because, like, when I think anti-hero, I either think The Crow or I go to Deadpool. And
Yeah.
you can't do the Ryan Reynolds thing.
Yeah, Deadpool's more of an absurdist, has an absurdist quality, which is all his own.
Yeah. And so I'm glad with the route that they went, although there's just some lines that you feel like we're trying to be edgy and it just feels a little out of place.
Well, let's go to the story stuff, because this I feel like I might talk a while on this. I said that keyword. I said woke. So I want to clarify, because since some people listening might think I'm about to just dog on the whole colonial storyline, which I'm not. I'm wondering why they put it in present day, the first part. Does it not make sense that Black Adam... Okay, so like couple this with the fact that he's woken up after 5,000 years. Mm-hmm. Amanda Waller just knows about him. Like, what? How do they know about him? Everyone's just like, he's woken up. Like, how do you know? How do you know who he is?
They have text.
They have what?
They have text.
The ancient text that nobody knew was inside the mountain?
No, they have, because Hawkman talks to the professor, and he's like, we have manuscripts and texts that no one knows about, that we have had for centuries. And the lady's like, how I know you're not lying to me. And then she has her dialogue with The Rock in the throne room.
But Hawkman's comic history would lead him to have some knowledge like that. I'm good with that, because he's related to like the kind of the Egyptian pantheon in DC, if I recall that correctly. But like for some reason, Amanda Waller does not fit in this movie for me.
So she is the connective tissue for anyone that is an anti-hero-esque character.
Okay, right.
And so
here's my problem. Why the JSA? Why not the Suicide Squad? Why not some Amanda Waller's types? Because here's my problem. The JSA looks kind of foolish. They look like lightweights. And the JSA should get more respect than that, in my opinion.
So the JSA is different than the Justice League. And I think that you needed a high enough of heroes, because most of the Suicide Squad, you're like, Okay, that's just an absurdist power.
You mean like Shazam?
You need you needed because Black Adam has Shazam's powers.
I know.
And so, but Shazam right now is basically doing the local street hero Peter Parker-esque type stuff.
I know. It's almost as if Black Adam should have showed up in Shazam 2 first, been a hardcore villain, and then they could have made this follow-up movie. You know where I'm going with this. Listen, we saw the trailer for Shazam 2 as well. Mm-hmm. And listen, I have thoughts, not least of which is it appears we're going super ageist with that movie. It's like young people versus old people, and old people are awful. That's like the tone of the trailer.
I am with you.
With who?
Get off my lawn, old people.
No. You're old. You're old.
I am compared to Billy and his foster siblings.
Gen Z thinks everyone older than them is old. So you're old.
I am.
Sorry, millennials. We're old. You're old. I'm Gen X, so I'm ancient.
You are. Get off our lawn.
And if you're a baby boomer, well, Gen Z, you're like those who shall not be named. They don't even talk about you. Yeah. Just in hushed tones.
So for me, I actually like this coming out beforehand, because if Black Adam has been in prison for 5,000 years, I need a prequel or an origin story of how he got out.
Yeah. I just feel like the story's a little off kilter. It's a little inconsistent, and it's because it feels rushed, which is DC's overall problem. Batman and Superman is rushed. They rush into these things. In this case, this has kind of been The Rock's passion project, and I feel like he gets it made, which is both good and bad, because they haven't had time to set this up. So hear me out. First of all, he's been asleep for 5,000 years. He comes out speaking perfect rock English.
As one does.
Yes, and with no real explanation. However, they could have explained this very well. They wouldn't have had to explain it at all if they made a certain choice, because what really doesn't make sense is that he wakes up in present day to a colonial occupation, which, by the way, there are no colonial occupations in the Middle East. There are a few left in Africa, the Caribbean, and that's about it. There's none in the Middle East. So this all feels kind of weird, like it's out of place.
So at times, just because some of the technology within it, and what's the mineral?
The Eternium.
Eternium.
Which is sort of like, it seems like it's the
vibranium
of DC.
And it felt like Wakanda, but like if Wakanda had been imprisoned.
Okay, but here's the problem with that. By waking Black Adam up in present day to this scenario, my question would be to the JSA, where you been? What's going on here with these clearly evil people digging for Eternium?
Well, that's the question of the people.
Well, I know it doesn't make sense in a world with Batman and Superman and the JSA and all these heroes. It doesn't make sense that this is still taking place. Listen, hear me out.
Okay.
If Black Adam gets woken up under the same circumstances in the 1800s, for like the first third of the movie, it takes place as a period piece. He wakes up, he beats the bad guys in dominating fashion. We get to see his power. We get to see his viciousness unbridled. And then he doesn't turn down the throne at that point. And he just becomes the ruler of Kandok?
Now you're going to make me look this up.
We're going to talk to Scotty later. He's the comic book expert when it comes to Black Adam. But my point being is if he had just kind of been under control of his place here by the time this rolls around another 100 years, when Sabak kind of, if they found another way that the crown gets found, then it might have worked a little better, where the JSA can show up in this place that most of the known world doesn't come around to, much like Wakanda, or more so Latveria, which is the home of Doctor Doom. So in Marvel Comics, Doctor Doom is the ruler of his own country.
Yeah.
And they could have done the same thing with Black Adam. Doctor Doom's clearly a villain, but his people love him. And they could have done the same thing with Black Adam and the people of
Kahndaq.
Kahndaq, yeah.
And Kahndaq is in North Africa, by the way. It's a fictional country. Shocking.
Obviously.
But so, I mean, that vision would work. I'm not saying it wouldn't. I think this does work. It just is a different way of storytelling.
Yeah, like I said, the colonial occupation stuff doesn't bother me. It just doesn't feel right timing wise.
And to your point with the English, after he says Shazam, he doesn't speak English. So you can presume it's the wizard's powers.
They do a little trick there. Yeah, I noticed that. But that's kind of lame.
I mean,
that's kind of lame.
The wizard
gives him the power to speak like Dwayne Johnson,
as wizards do. The wizard gave Billy the power to speak like Zachary Levi.
Yeah. So for me, the stuff that wasn't so good was just those couple things. The special effects in places was oddly not consistent. And then there was just some story choices that were just like, the whole last act of the film with Sabak. Boy, I don't know if they needed that bad guy. I don't know if they needed that. Like you said.
Yeah, so my rating would be higher if they had ended it right after they hand Black Adam over to James Gunn's wife to be imprisoned. Because she is like Amanda Waller's right-hand woman right now. Mm-hmm. But they didn't. There were parts within the last act that I did enjoy, especially Dr. Fate. And then Hawkman's like last heroic act that he does was really cool. But again, I think you could have had another film where even post-credit scene,
yeah,
you see the Ishmael, that's his name,
right? Yeah,
go into the pits of Hades.
So my problem with the movie are more of a structure kind. So imagine a Shazam 2 that doesn't have the evil old people in it. And instead has, so at the end of Shazam 1, let's pretend they teased Black Adam with an end credit scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shazam 2 is a Shazam movie, but we get that backstory. We get them waking up Black Adam and, his whole kind of origin in that first half of a Shazam movie, right?
Yeah.
While it's still being a Shazam movie. And then Shazam and Black Adam fight. And however you resolve that, it doesn't resolve completely because the movie should end with Shazam winning him a minor battle because he's the good guy, but it being unresolved and he needs help.
Yeah.
Cue in credit scene with the JSA, Amanda Waller, whoever you want, right? And then it could lead into this movie where he's already in control of Kahndaq, and somebody is looking for the crown. Right? Yeah. This Ishmael guy can be the leader of whatever this gang is, and they can find
Inner
him.
gang.
Yeah. And so, for me, it's just like this structurally could have been a lot different, where some of the more satisfying parts of Black Adam's character that I feel like we don't get. Whereas I really feel like meeting him as villain first would have been key.
I think that the issue right now is, where does the rub come between the rest of the Shazam people and Black Adam?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'll be interested to see, how Billy and Black Adam cross paths. Because right now they're half a world apart.
Well, and that's the interesting part, too, is it makes sense that Black Adam would appear in an end credit scene for this Shazam 2 movie. But I don't think that's going to happen now because spoiler, big surprise, Superman shows up in the end credit scene
Soups
of Black Adams, which is a big moment. And I feel like on one level, you're waiting the entire movie for that excitement. Like, listen, it's not that the movie's not is bad. It's just not great. And like, I don't feel like I don't feel like there's a lot of chances being took in the story. It's a pretty straightforward story, which is why a lot of critics are kind of down on it. Me, I like superhero movies, so I'm fine with that. But by putting Superman in that end credit scene, which on one hand is awesome.
Oh, I had goosebumps.
But yeah, I did too, because seeing Henry Cavill's Superman's great. Seeing two guys of that power, great. Understanding that that's exactly where Rock wants the story to go, and he kind of made that happen, makes it seem like I'm not going to get Black Adam and Shazam together, which is super weird because they wear the same costume with different colors.
So I took it a different way, that I think that Superman could be a connector for Black Adam and Shazam, because appears at the post-credit scene of Shazam 1, the feet of Superman.
That's right.
Because they couldn't
when
use
they didn't have Henry, yeah.
So, like, Henry could be the connecting tissue in which, if Black Adam is supposed to be the launching point for the new DCEU, let's say the past was just a soft launch, kind of like on Parks and Rec when Tommy launches his Italian restaurant and the menus have pictures of the dog's bum on it, and it grosses out the investor, and the investor backs out. Okay, so that's what DCEU was prior to this. Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful for it to go like in Parks and Rec, where Tom's Bistro grows and they have 16 restaurants.
Do you have any stuff that could have been better for you?
Again, we could have ended the movie really at that point.
The main villain in the third act. That's the problem. He's a little over the top too.
Which I called as soon as the guy falls off the cliff.
Yeah.
So there's three of them that go into the mountain. When that guy falls off the cliff, I'm like, Ishmael is a dirty two-timing crosser. How dare he? And then, like, they don't confirm it for a long time. And then finally, it's like, give me the crown.
Let's move on to biblical themes. Greatest story ever told award. Are there biblical themes in the movie?
So with Dwayne's character, he is given the chance to have a clean slate. He gets redeemed.
Yeah.
Now, what he does with this clean slate remains to be seen, because Amanda Waller challenges him at the post-credit scene and Soups gets introduced. But like, he had been carrying around anger and guilt, and it was like biblical wrath is what he had dished out 5,000 years ago. And that's
fathers and sons, a lot of that kind of stuff running through the movie.
And he gets imprisoned because of his killing ways, and evidently there's an ancient text in which Hawkman, if you are somewhat familiar with the comics, I mean, it's a like Egyptian, like, kind of passes down generationally.
Yeah.
The powers and abilities,
and apparently the money.
And the money.
Hawkman is loaded.
Oh yeah, like,
he has a jet.
I wondered if Bruce Wayne had funded his compound because,
hey, is Morgan Freeman here? Is he here somewhere? My goodness, bro.
I mean, literally, like, parts are moving and sliding, and he has like a labyrinth in his backyard. It was impressive, and I'm like, This is in Louisiana?
Yeah, that was just randomly. Like, that was so unnecessary. They did not need to tell us where he lived, but they did. It was in Louisiana, and I was like, wasn't expecting that.
That was a twist.
Yeah. Okay. Who's the winner of the movie? Who do you think wins this movie?
The Justice Society of America wins the movie in my book.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And especially Hawkman and Dr. Fate.
I think even through the best efforts of the acting that we've already talked about, I think that JSA is pretty forgettable by the end of the movie. Not their fault, more of the story writing and how they're used in the movie, the choices made to how they're utilized. I feel like they're forgettable. Dr. Fate's dead by the end of the movie, although you don't think so.
I don't think so.
He appears to be dead. Let's say that.
Yeah. Allegedly dead.
Hawkman is great. Aldous Hodge is wonderful in the part, but we don't really know anything about these guys.
Not yet. It was an intro.
We don't get any sort of gravitas of their place in the world, which should be Justice League level. These guys are legit.
They are.
And yet we don't really feel any of that. So they won't be my vote. I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the winner of this movie because it is his passion project and he gets this thing made and he gets Henry Cavill in it, which the chatter is that was him.
That was all him.
He did that. He's like, if you were a fan of Henry Cavill as Superman, you have The Rock to thank for him being back in the DCEU. Now there's all sorts of chatter out there that their Man of Steel 2 is green light.
Oh yeah.
And for that, I will be eternally grateful to one Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because he did it.
And if Henry legitimately signs on for Man of Steel 2 or whatever Superman title they go with, the way Henry has been talking in interviews about Superman, it's going to be a more true to the character of Superman, and we're not rushing to like evil incarnate Superman.
Yeah, the rumor is that Dwayne Johnson gets them back to the table, and Hamada out, for all intents and purposes, because he was the one holding it up, and Cavill comes back, and Cavill's caveat is, I want a sequel. I want a Superman movie, which is probably what he wanted from the beginning. They rushed to Batman versus Superman. There really should have been a Man of Steel 2 to lead up to that. Whatever. It's all water under the bridge.
Probably should have been a Batman movie before as well.
Yeah. But for better or for worse, you've got a DCU EU way forward here, and that is because of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He's sort of in control here, and he's the guy who brought it together, and this movie doesn't suck. And so therefore, for better or for worse, he wins. He's the winner. He's got some control here. He's got some with some clout to throw around, and this is the way forward for the DCEU. And so I think he's the winner of the movie.
So he was almost the loser of the movie for me, just because, especially first half of the movie, the Justice Society has some meaningful scenes, and you get to see like the United States hero or savior complex syndrome play out through them.
Yeah.
And then you get the backlash from the people of like, we have been under this rule for like 28 years. Where have you been?
Yep.
And
which I'm with him. Doesn't make much sense.
Well, I mean, when you have
Superman exists in this world.
I don't. We need to get clarification of what DCEU previous moments have happened.
Yeah.
Because if Darkseid has showed up, holy cow! Like,
yeah,
that's a huge cosmic.
That's
like you need Green Lantern.
That's still a problem because we've gotten every indication that the Snyderverse is gone, and yet Superman shows up at the end of this. So they're going to have to explain what's been happening.
Oh, and maybe that's what Flash will do.
Maybe. And here's hoping to that. And, we just did last week, we did a Be Kind Rewind on Tombstone. We talked about Kurt Russell, how he kind of had to pull together that movie. And in doing so, lessened his role because that movie was going to be largely a Wyatt Earp movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you can see that here. Now, it doesn't get to the same effect as Tombstone does, obviously, but he makes this movie happen, and he does it in a very not Dwayne Johnson way. He's very understated in the movie for most of it.
Oh, yeah, because every movie Dwayne is in, Dwayne is the ultimate hero and is relied upon for the saving.
And he's given the one-liners, but most of the one-liners go to the JSA.
And I know he has within his contract with a lot of his projects, like he can only get hit so many times and look like a weakling so many times, and he can't take the last hit.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was a big deal on Hobbs and Shaw and whatever Fast and Furious movie he was in.
I don't know how they're going to do that if they do a Superman movie. Superman's got to win, bro.
Which in this movie, he gets his butt handed to him a few times.
Yeah.
And so.
But he was in control. This is The Rock's movie.
Yeah.
His passion project. Go Get Him Next Time award. Who's your loser of the movie?
I don't really know who I would give it to.
I do.
I guess the guy that played Ishmael / whatever the villain's name was at the last act of the movie.
Yeah, he's not good. Some of the supporting cast, I'm going to give it to the supporting cast, just in general, after the JSA. So we said the actors that were good in the movie. Nearly everyone after that, except for maybe the girl's his brother.
The brother is hilarious.
Yeah, he's kind of funny. Yeah, he's funny. But everyone else, and that includes the kid.
The kid at times.
Very cringy. Especially
cringy.
when he's trying to like rile up the people.
Yeah, he doesn't have enough passion.
Not believable.
Where like the kid that is Dwayne's son.
Yes,
he does a great job.
I'm glad you said that because the whole time I'm thinking, why didn't they let that kid play that part and then let the other kid play the other part?
Oh, because like that kid did a great job. I was like, hey, look at him. And so
I feel like we've crossed the line. I hate outing a kid actor, but maybe it's the director. I don't know, but he just wasn't. It was very cringy, those scenes.
So the thing they do with their hands is almost a diamond cutter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, DDP's about to get some royalties.
He's like, bang!
But we didn't do the full-on diamond cutter. It's just a pyramid shape.
So, yeah, some of the supporting cast gets my Go Get 'Em Next Time award because I believe that the movie hangs up on that and whoever wrote the script. Now, I don't know who gets credit for being the writers on this. I assume it had multiple writers because, yeah. So it's got 3 writers. Saurabh Nashirvani, Adam Stitzkiel, and Rory Haynes. 3 people on the screenplay, which indicates it went through some rewrites. And frankly, I think you can tell because of things we've already mentioned. It's a little inconsistent for me.
And I think going forward, there will be a more unilateral direction with Discovery buying Warner Brothers and what's his name getting the axe this week or stepping down on his own, whatever happened, which you could bring back Cyborg now.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
I mean, I think that because DC was in such a weird place, like it was very dependent on who was directing for the quality of it. So with the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, I think the success of those or the good parts of those is all James Gunn. It's nothing that the brass at DC had done.
Well, the good news is there's some rumors out there that James Gunn may be going to slide into that kind of Feige role for DC and just be kind of the overseer.
Which would be amazing. Because like right now, I could say Feige gets a lot of the credit for the success of the MCU and for keeping a direction, for limiting some of the directors that he has had from going far out, because that's been a critique evidently of Thor Love and Thunder, that he didn't limit Taika enough.
Yeah.
But DC didn't have that direction. So it was hit or miss, and you had to be a fan of the comics to enjoy them. And this one, I feel you don't have to be a fan of the comics to enjoy the movie. You just have to enjoy an action movie, because, I mean, it, for the most part, has a lot of action in it. And just fun. I mean, it was a fun movie. Again, not Citizen Kane, not The Godfather. And I think part of the reason that it has gotten such mixed reviews, where, like, if we go far back into the comic book movie genre, it's pretty much filled right now. There isn't a market that you can carve out your own niche into, except the way the critics are like bombing left and right on comic book movies at the current moment. I think if you did an quote unquote artsy comic book movie with a deep story, where like Eternals, I think, was stunningly beautiful. It didn't have that deep of a story. Yeah. If you could get someone to get Christopher Nolan to write a comic book movie and get Chloe Zhao to direct it, then maybe you would satisfy everyone, because that's not a market that's being cornered right now. But right now we have a plethora to compare to and to justify our rating systems.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up if you were a comic book reader or not, because if we need to go that direction, and we need to talk to our friend Scotty.
Yes.
Scotty knows comic books, and we need that, because I don't know if either of us are Black Adam experts.
So Black Adam, no. Shazam, a little bit. Hawkman, a little bit. Scotty, all the above.
So Scotty is our guy. He's our resident comic expert. We're going to talk to Scotty. Cody, to the Geek Phone!
Ring, 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 the Geek Phone.
All right, here we are. We're on the Geek Phone, Cody.
We are on the Geek Phone.
And we are on the Geek Phone with our resident comic expert, Scotty Walker. Scotty, what's up?
Not much. How about you guys?
Whew. Man, we've been talking about Black Adam.
Coming off an emotional roller coaster for myself.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm just saying a bunch of right things. Cody's saying a bunch of wrong things. You know how it goes. So we've been talking about the movie, and it's going well, and now we've got you on the program. And really, before we get to the final question, which is what we brought you on for, I want you to you're our comic expert guy. So tell me how they did as far as Black Adam lore, like the canon. What's the same? What did they get right? What did they get wrong? That kind of stuff.
Well, I think it's very hard. This isn't an easy character to really adapt. For one, you have multiple origins, because DC didn't technically own this character in the beginning. It was Fawcett Comics. And when Fawcett had him, he only appeared once before the lawsuit from DC was finalized, and DC got him as a character. He shows up in Marvel Family #1, and by the end of that issue, he's dead. So it was never a character that we thought would go on any further.
Spoilers. Just in case we're going back to read that American Family, what was it? Marvel Family #1?
Marvel Family #1. which is a very hard issue to get, by the way, because it's never been reprinted. DC technically doesn't own the right to reprint those issues either. It's a weird kind of copyright thing that's weird.
How much is that comic worth? What are we talking about? $50,000
at least.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's a big one. So you have multiple origins, and then when DC decided to adapt Shazam again, they brought him back and brought him kind of readapted that first appearance. So there was never really a set in stone origin for him, just that he was the first champion of the Wizard and had pretty much used the powers for the wrong. Now fast forward to New 52 is when we get the origin that the movie really tries to adapt, and it makes him a little more sympathetic, that you feel like you understand why he did the things that he did. In New 52, it's an uncle instead of a father kind of thing. So that's a little bit of a change. But I think for me, what I felt like really worked was that father dynamic between him and his son and his family. They borrow a lot of the Jeff Johns JSA run. Jeff Johns is really the one to really go back and redefine that character and make him into the anti-hero that we see in the movie a lot.
Yeah. Now, as I understand it, and I'm not a big DC Comics guy, but I do read a little bit. The JSA is important in the Black Adam story because he's actually a member of the JSA after a while, right?
He is. He shows up in issue number 6 of Jeff Johns' run, and then is said to still be kind of a villain in that first kind of run, and then he shows back up in a couple issues later then, and shows up wanting to be part of the team, and they're very hesitant to begin with, and then slowly realize that they need somebody who is a powerhouse that can come in and take care of these jobs. And the really cool thing that you kind of get a little bit of a hint in the movie about him and Atom Smasher become very close friends and become kind of like this back and forth between the two that's really nice, like brothers pretty much, even to the point so much so that, Hawkman and Fate still have this, like, you're doing the right thing, but you're doing it the wrong way thing about killing and the excessive force. At one point in the comics, Atom Smasher is put in a position where he either fails or crosses that line to accomplish his mission. And the only person to really understand it is Black Adam. And they kind of bond in that moment and really, understand where each other's coming from. And for a while defect and become a 2-man team.
So them putting the JSA in this movie is not just on a whim. Like their future plans with Black Adam are probably to move in that direction.
I would say yes. I would hope so. I really do feel like that's somewhere to go. I also feel like at one point this movie was also supposed to have Hot Girl. Wait. Who?
Hawk Girl.
Oh, I thought you said Hot Girl. I was like, whoa. This is a family show, Scotty.
She was supposed to be in this movie as well, and they decided that telling that story was too much to cram back into this movie as well, because that is a whole other story as well. Because her and Hawkman are always reincarnated and always seem to find each other through true love.
Okay.
Aww.
Okay. So here's my question then. Given that they're taking this like the New 52 route, which DC has rewritten their history so many times with Crisis and then the 52 and the New 52 and yeah. So I'm okay with this, but does this mean we will never really see Black Adam as a full-on villain?
I don't think we will. I really don't. Maybe down the line we will, because there's still been moments where, he has sided with villains. He has sided with Lex and the Legion of Doom a few times, even post being an anti-hero. So it's still possible. I do think at some point, though, spoilers, after the mid-credit scene, at some point we're going to cast him as that villain to finish out that storyline easily.
I'm kind of bummed about that because I just want to see him and the guy that plays Shazam. What's his name, Cody?
Zach Levi.
Zach Levi. I would love to see them in a movie together, bantering back and forth while they're, at odds with each other. And I guess maybe it seems like we're not going to see that.
I think we will, though. I really do. I think, at some point, I think what you do is you use Superman as that middle ground to bring those tones together. If you're Warner Brothers and DC, that's how you make those two totally different franchises work together. Yeah. And I think it becomes that, at some point, like in the comics, Black Adam realizes that there's another like him out there and he goes after him. And, Superman intervenes.
Interesting. Okay. Well, the interesting thing about that trope would be like if you bring all those three dudes in one movie and they're fighting at first, by the end of it, there's got to be one heck of a awfully powerful villain for them to be able to have any sort of intrigue, which I don't know if you have to make the movie about that. Part of the thing we've talked about before you got on here on the Geek Phone, Scotty, was we felt the villain in this movie at the end was unnecessary.
I don't think so. I think for me, I felt like when we do Sabak, you leave it so that at the end, then you finally have that moment with the sacrifice of Dr. Fate, that Hawkman finally sees what Black Adam can do and kind of understands, and there's that resolution to that fight between the two of them by the end. Mm-hmm. I think if you stop before you get to Sabak, you don't have that, you don't finish that thread. Yeah. So I think there had to be some overarching there at the end that, gave Black Adam that moment of redemption. Yeah, even at the cost of losing Dr. Fate. Yeah.
My pastor side is like, but does he have to be so Satan-y?
Yeah, that's a hard one to get around.
Yeah, that one's going to be a tough one for the kids.
I did really enjoy that twist that you had talked about, Scotty, of changing the storyline from an uncle and nephew to a father and a son. And the movie played it really well that you thought that he was the chosen champion from the beginning, but it really was his son was the chosen champion, and his son loved his dad so much that he gave him that name to say and become the Black Adam.
Well, and not only that, but if they follow more of that Jeff Johns written story, Scotty, that's a great change because in the future, if they're going to pair him with the JSA again at some point, him and Atom Smasher's relationship can be tweaked in a way where the Atom Smasher we get in this movie is pretty young.
He's a lot younger than what we see in the comics.
And it can be more of a father-son relationship than a brotherly relationship for them. Which would be kind of cool.
Which also, the other thing that we're not thinking about is you have the Isis and the Osiris thing. We see her and him both in the movie, the mother and son, that is also another character that could easily become, he could be a father figure too as well. Because in the comics, at one point, he gives his powers, and just like Shazam, has a Black Adam family.
Oh, okay. Oh, that'd be interesting too. Yeah.
The only problem is, Isis is kind of a troubled name now to use. So
right.
Get around that a little bit, but
yeah. Yep. Okay, Scotty, it's time for the final question. This is the question we do at the end of every movie review. It's specific to each movie. And here it is. We'll let you go first. Or do we want to save Scotty for last?
I think save Scotty.
Okay. We'll ask Cody first. Cody, did the hierarchy of the DCEU just change?
Oh, yeah, it changed.
Nope, you're wrong. Moving on. I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
So I do think that if you have the Black Adam / Shazam universe, that's what I'm calling it now, and you build off of it and you reincorporate Superman and you kind of stay away from Batman for a while. I think that doing the solo Batman stuff's good, and then you bring Batman in for like a bigger.
I mean, the chatter seems to indicate what you just said, that Reeves's Batman, Matt Reeves, is that his name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His Batman universe is going to be a separate thing from the DCEU they're going with at large right now.
And what it sounds like is Affleck is staying as the DCU Batman.
Yeah. So that there's still a Batman in the DCEU universe at large, but what Matt Reeves is doing is a separate thing.
Which I think that's the big law of unintended consequences with Marvel, is that they have kind of ruined the separate superhero movies, because now everything has to be connected. And so you can do it with Batman, just because the best version of Batman on screen, some would argue, is the Nolan verse, which isn't connected to anything else. Mm-hmm. It's just a separate thing. And so I think if you build off of Black Adam and you shift the direction, because we're not going Snyderverse route or fully Snyderverse route, and you start introducing superheroes in connection with that, and you have the JSA, which again, different than the Justice League, it should be good. And so the hierarchy in just DC in general, I think, has shifted for the better.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. And my answer to the question would be, yeah, I don't think we'll get to what our ratings of the movie are. And I definitely think it could have been better. But I think for better or worse, this is the route they have to go. I think they dug themselves. Go ahead, Scotty.
But I think, it didn't have to come out and be the Batman. I think this movie hit at the right time and the right tone and the right shift. I think, coming out being pretty much a big action movie is the right move for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and then I can speak to that. Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying there. They needed to keep it simple and to just not turn people away. And I don't think they did that. I think the worst feeling you might have coming out of that theater is, well, I didn't really know who Black Adam was going in, and I really don't coming out, and I'm not all that interested. That's about the worst stance I think you could possibly take from that movie, because there's not a lot of digging in to real character stuff other than the flashbacks. We know just enough about who he was, who he is, because once he's there as The Rock, we don't get any sort of exposition or what's going on inside his head. We don't get any sort of character development from the present day scenes, which is fine.
Yeah, because he's still discovering who he is.
Yeah,
after
he doesn't
being
know.
Imprisoned for 5,000 years
and being a slave.
Yeah,
being imprisoned.
And so, my answer to is the hierarchy of the DCEU changed? Yes, but for better or worse, it had to be. And I almost understand why this movie has has to be a simple, straightforward action movie, which when you get The Rock, and it's what you're going to get, and that's fine. It's not, it's not like, even you referenced the Nolan Batman movies, right? It's like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Which, again, I get it and I understand, but some people are going to leave the theater not being super stoked about it. But I think that was not what they were looking for. What they were looking for was like, hey, we need to go in a new direction. We need to start small with something, simple with something. And we got a guy, maybe one of the biggest stars on the planet, in The Rock, and we can just make a Rock style movie, which, by the way, Scotty, you'll be glad to know, we rave about The Rock in what we've already talked about, because he really tones it down for him. He's not just Dwayne Johnson in this movie. And I thought that was very good.
And this became his highest grossing movie to date.
Yeah, has it? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. He's had some big movies. So, yes, the hierarchy's changed. I'll get to my final rating later, but for better or worse, it's good enough to move forward. Is it for the casual DC fan like myself, is it a little disappointing that it's not centered around, Superman or Batman, a bigger hero? Yeah, a little, because I thought that's what they had with about the first 2/3 of Man of Steel way back when, was this great root starting point. And then the last third of Man of Steel happens and I'm like, ugh, but I think for better or worse, yes, the answer is yes. The hierarchy's changed. Move forward, see if you can tell some interesting stories now. So, Scotty, has the hierarchy of the DCEU changed?
I agree. I say yes. And coming out of this movie, I feel like, if you like Snyderverse or don't like Snyderverse, neither way denies that if it happened, didn't happen. But I think, at the end of the day, don't you want Black Adam on your side moving forward if we are moving towards Darkseid as our big bad in that universe? If you are going the route of building to a villain like Thanos, like Marvel did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you easily do that. I think the thing going forward that I'd like to see them keep doing, and they did it in this, I think you can use Waller as that Nick Fury character easily. Mm-hmm. I don't think you have to necessarily do it as being Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman, any of the core Justice League members. I think you do it as Waller being that go in between. She's somebody that, just like Fury on the other side, that, even more so works in the gray areas, but at the end of the day, does she have the right motive at hand? Yes, so I think it has shifted, and going forward will be interesting to see how quickly do we want to build to, that big event movie? Because, they're got to already be thinking about that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Does Amanda Waller, does Amanda Waller telling the JSA what to do? Does that make sense?
It does to me. I feel like, there has to be some kind of watchdog in there. And I thought it was interesting to make her kind of like, go do this, Yeah,
she's like a go-between.
Yeah, so, the other thing that's interesting to me is, Waller's always got something on everybody. What does she have on these? And what does she have on Superman is the other question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just move to the last thing we do on the every review. Out of 10, what are you rating this movie, Scotty?
I think I'd probably go an 8.5 to a 9. Like we said, it's not hugely meaningful, like say the Batman or the Nolanverse Batman movies. It's not Wonder Woman. It's not, that heavy and weighty, but it does the right things, and the comic book accuracy that is really there, that really impresses me how close we kept that character to its bones in the comics. Mm-hmm. And something we haven't talked about, that Henry Winkler cameo as the old house smasher. So the little, that for me really got me, and I feel like, and I love the Marvel movies, but I feel like at times, the thing that DC has going for them a lot of times is more the comic book accuracy and drawing on those back issues and drawing on that lore a little more than what Marvel does.
Yeah, this is when it's interesting for me, especially because I have two DC guys. So it's interesting to hear you guys, to see where you're at with this movie. Cody, what's your final rating for Black Adam?
If we were just going off of the Rock scale, like this is his best movie, and I'm giving it a 10 on that scale.
You're smelling what the Rock is cooking.
But and if we were going off DCU movies, it's a solid 9. But if I'm just going off of my typical scale, I think I would have left it at an 8. But the two Henry cameos, Winkler and Cavill, bump it up to an 8.5. And to learn that they didn't get Cavill until about a month before the release, I mean, that's mind blowing.
Yeah,
it was a headless Superman cameo till a month ago.
Yeah,
they were doing the Shazam thing again.
Yeah. So it's interesting to hear your guys' scores, because I like that you put it that way, Cody, because I have no other choice, being a casual DC fan, to just rank it in my normal movie scale. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't remember what I give Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness a 6.5. Is that what I gave that?
I think 6.5.
Yeah. I gave Thor Love and Thunder way below that. I want to say give it a 4, but I don't remember. I would give this movie a solid 6 for me. This is a 6 for me. It wasn't a bad movie, but to me, it wasn't a great movie. But I don't think they were going for greatness. As we've said, they're just going to establish something, which you could kind of feel that. And it seemed like so much so that when that end credit scene happens with Henry Cavill, you're like, this is like what they were building for the whole time. Was the like, hey, by the way, this story is going to continue. It's just going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, that's why I don't think I like the villain, because it was just like, oh, we're just filling time. And there has to be a bad guy. I felt like the villain was two-dimensional and at some points very, very literally. So that some of that digital work was not great. But I thought it was a good movie. I didn't think it was great. I would put it just a sliver below Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness for me. Clearly better than Thor Love and Thunder, though. I just loathe Thor Love and Thunder.
I know you do. That reminds me of my question. But
I'm a Marvel guy, so I'm going to judge it more extreme, just like you guys would with the DC stuff.
So I read an article that most DC fans are saying to Marvel fans that this is far better than Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, and Thor 4, Love and Thunder. Do you guys agree with that sentiment? Yes or no? Dave, you kind of hinted at yours.
Yeah, I'll go first there. I disagree with the Doctor Strange. I don't think they're separated by much. I think they're both good movies, but not great. And so I would disagree with that. But yeah, clearly better than Thor Love and Thunder. Thor Love and Thunder is a mess in more ways than one. Not just the directing and the storytelling, just the story they're trying to tell as a whole. The script writing, it's just terrible. It's brutal.
But I think that gets to the root of what we're seeing with Marvel. I feel like there's this kind of weird, uneasy point where we're at. And I think at some point you also, if you're going to hire directors like Taika Waititi or Sam Raimi, you have to let them be those guys.
Yeah, and when I think Feige, if we, this is another conversation, but I think Feige's actually correcting that with a lot of what you're seeing of their future plans. I think he's turning that ship back to the way it was. So, neither here nor there. What do you think, Scotty?
I say yes. I think it is better than both. Mm-hmm. I did love both of those movies, but I felt like, yet again, like I said, comic book accuracy, is huge to me going into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
so how did you not hate Thor?
I don't know. I just felt like with this, there was something that those two were missing for me. And I also felt like the one thing that this had that those two didn't have going into it is it had one unifying voice and knew what it wanted to be. Whereas those other two, I didn't feel like it knew. So I say yes. I do think that this is a better movie than those
I think
two.
that's fair.
Okay, so for me, I'm going to be the contrarian again.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So I think Black Adam's better than Multiverse or Doctor Strange too. I actually love Thor Love and Thunder because it chose to do a unique storytelling dynamic there. Mm-hmm. And again, you have to know who the storyteller is within that story. And so is the storyteller accurate? Is the storyteller going to tell it like it actually happened?
See, I think you're giving Taika too much credit.
I don't. I think justifiable credit. Again, for me, I think if Black Adam had ended just before, like when he is put under ice and it will be, and they do like a post credits of the crowns glowing and then Black Adam returns, mm-hmm. and built off of that. Again, you don't get the golden thread, but it does lead to a continuation and you get another Pierce Brosnan movie. So for me, I think it's just a notch below Thor Love and Thunder, but I am one of like the few people that really love Thor Love and Thunder. So,
and what we need out of life are more Pierce Brosnan movies, I think.
Which sounds like we're not done with Dr. Fate. So, the Rock made comments that we're not done. So,
well, DC felt the need to actually come out and say it.
Yeah.
Which I don't think they needed to do, to have trust that the comic fans would know that, hey, the helmet is the thing here and it picks different hosts. So,
well, and not even that, we could easily do a prequel movie, if it's a JSA movie or if it's a solo Dr. Fate movie.
Yeah, give me World War II JSA. I'm here for that.
Yes.
I'm all for that. Hey, Scotty Walker, thank you so much for coming on. Our geek of the round table in charge of comic book lore.
Yes, all things comic books.
You're our guy. Thank you for coming on. Everybody, thanks so much for listening to the podcast, Pop Culture Pastor. Make sure and subscribe and share and review and all of that stuff. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time.